Arjun, a versatile GM and operations leader. He had had several product and business leadership roles throughout his career in video games and semiconductors. At Electronic Arts, he had led teams on many beloved franchises, including The Sims, Battlefield, Plants vs. Zombies, and Bejeweled, with an emphasis on profitable growth through live services and distributed development and business model transformations. While he's currently based in Seattle, he used to lead EA's mobile studio, Slingshot Games in Hyderabad, and is well versed with the talent, opportunities, and growth of the gaming industry in India. Thank you, Arjun. Over to you.
Cool. Thanks. Morning, folks. Super happy to be here, and it's great to see the buzz at IGDC this year. Like I heard, it's 6,000 people this year who are attending, which is great. So hopefully this is the first session of the morning, and hopefully I keep you guys engaged. The flavor of the info I'll share today is I'm trying to stay away from like cliches and more on like experiences based on teams and products that I've worked on. And I'm hoping it caters to developers as well as to managers and leaders. And some of it hopefully is to larger organizations as well as to indies. So would love feedback on it, when I wrap up. A little bit about me. So I've had two distinct phases to my career. I started off in semiconductors. I was a hardcore techie. I built chips for telecom applications, for hearing aids, for digital TVs. Had a lot of fun doing that, and I've had even more fun in my next 15 years at EA, where I've led teams. It's been the thing that I've enjoyed most is change management and working through. You set a strategy and you're evaluating it in 6 months and a year and so on. It's so dynamic. It's a lot of fun. On the personal side, I love long distance running. And one of my favorite activities is the Ragnar team relay series. So this is like a 200-mile relay that you're running with a team of 6 or 12 people. Everybody's kind of cooped up in a van together and one person's running, and you're doing it over a day and a half. It's a great team activity that I would encourage for folks to partner. Like it really builds that team camaraderie. So I'd like to share the 3 lenses that are most useful when you think about building features or decisions that you're making as you're running your games. The first lens is players. Remember, the game that we make is only as good as players say it is. That's what really matters. So one experience I'll share from a game, Bejeweled Blitz, that we had worked on. So the team spent many months building this feature called Encore, which was a way for you to, at the end of the game, a pop-up will show up where you can get a score boost by sinking a few more coins in there. So we spent months building the feature. We spent many weeks fine-tuning the UI UX for this. And guess what was we did a focus group with players and we watched videos of how they engaged with this pop-up. And what we found was all that effort that we'd put in for months and weeks with the fine-tuning, the thing that players did most was they just clicked on the X. That was what most players said. They didn't actually go through all of that stuff. The only thing they cared about in all of this was the score boost. And so we redesigned it to really emphasize, all of the stuff we put in there was really not relevant. What they cared about was getting that score boost because that was their motivation for playing that particular level. And so redesigning this helped. Another example is from a game, Plants vs. Zombies 2. When we built the game, our strategy was every 2 or 3 months we would have a new world that we would sell for $5. You pay $5 to get a key, you unlock the world. Each world comes with a set of 20 or 30 plants and zombies and different challenges in each level. It would take us 3 months to build this. Players would spend the money, buy it, and finish playing within a week. And so it was very cyclical. And what when we really dug deep, what we found was what players really enjoyed was the plants and the quirkiness in them. And so we shifted to making premium plants. And instead of all that effort we put in building this world with so many different characters, every month we would have a new plant, sell for the same $5. And that worked well. And then we added systems where there were quests associated with the plants, there were events, there were tournaments, and that worked well. So we went from this heavy content treadmill to really what players cared about was having those plants that they can play with. And we were able to grow the business that way. So that was cool. Another thing, I think this is something you guys are all familiar with. It's important to have appointment mechanics and ritualize the player experience. The simple thing of adding that little timer that reminded players when the next quest will show up. What that did was it basically stabilized our DAU, and we saw that every 4 or 8 hours when the new quest was there, our DAU would spike. So that was pretty cool. Another principle that I'd highly encourage folks to apply is, when you're making your feature design to design for live services from the outset, what players, so this is this is by no means gospel, this is what I have found. What players care most about is how often you're engaging them. What is next in terms of importance is how much new stuff you're providing them. And what they least care about is how you're actually doing it. Like, what's under the hood? Like, is it a reskin? Is it stuff built from scratch? They don't care. They just want something new to engage with. Is it a client update you're doing, or is it a server-side push? Doesn't matter to them. For them, it's like something interesting and new that they can engage with, and that's what matters. So the second lens is related to people or the team. And I'll share a few things that cater to both individuals and leaders that make the magic and help ensure like you have a solid team that's executing well. So one thing is T-skills. For those of you not familiar with the concept, basically T-skills is somebody who is really an expert in one specific area, but also has a broad understanding of other areas. And it's really valuable to have folks with T-skills in your team. There was one, again, on Plants vs. Zombies 2, there was one QA tester in the team who took, in his free time, he built a tool for the designers to make levels, and then eventually he became part of the design team for us. So like having folks who are experts in one area but are able to kind of understand others and contribute is like super important, right? The other thing when it comes to skills is, and I've learned this the hard way myself in my career, like hard skills get you in the door, but it's your soft skills that move you up the ladder. So in the context of a game team, it's great to have kick-ass engineers, really smart designers in the team, but it's their ability to collaborate, it's their ability to influence everybody to align on that vision and build it in a cohesive way. Like that's what makes a difference. So it's important to identify folks who have these attributes in your team. The other thing that's super important is building trust. I think that is super key to building a successful team and having a successful game. One way to do this is to empower everybody with information and context. It's very powerful for everybody to understand the business context. So as leaders of teams, the more you're able to be transparent about what are the constraints you're operating the business in, and how is the work that they're doing actually impacting what your overall strategy is, and even your financials, I would encourage that. One small tool that I've found works well is one-on-one meetings, where you're able, I think that even a 5 or 10 minute conversation with somebody, if it can light a spark, that can really have a big impact to how it can amplify their performance and impact to the team. So take the time to do that. The other thing when it comes to sharing business context is being super clear in what your strategic pillars are, because games are complex. There's no silver bullet to what we do, what works in one game won't work in the other. So it's key to define your strategic pillars and to repeat it constantly. Like your ideal is everybody in the team is using the same language, saying the exact same words. So identify your buzzwords, make sure that everybody understands them, and keep repeating it. I think that's important. This one is a tricky one, and when I put this slide, I realized that even the team that I'm part of now, this is something we struggle with. The power of a singular goal. It's so important not to have the word "and" when it comes to your strategy and vision. If your strategy is, I'm going to make a game that's great for the Indian market and the global market and Gen Zs and millennials, it makes it too broad and it's challenging for the team to execute on. So the more you're able to have a singular goal, the better your chances of success. The third lens is the process lens, how the magic is made, how the sauce is made. And it's, this is the piece where the teams can work with clarity and purpose to make the magic. So I'll talk to some tenets and tips over here. The first one is, and this, it's mostly applicable, I would say, to larger teams, but I'd encourage indies also to use this approach, because there's no silver bullet for success. The more diligent you are when it comes to planning how you're going to go out building the game, the better your chances. So having that scope capacity dashboard, or that view of, what is your scope that you're building, which you can represent either in staff days or in points, depending on what system you're using. Similarly, on the capacity side, you represent it either in staff days or points. You compare the two, have a rule set for how much overage you're willing to kind of live with. My rule set is typically 20 or 30% of overage, which means you're setting something that's slightly ambitious, slightly aggressive, that the team can kind of aspire to. If your team is not able to have this clear scope cap view, I would call that a red flag, right? Like at least in the planning phase. And once you are in production, the thing that's super important is to have regular visual demos of progress. If your team is not able to do regular visual demos, that's also a red flag. Because if you're not able to cohesively show that progress, that means things are not working well. This is another mantra that I've used in all teams, which is hope for the best and plan for the worst. I'll talk to different functions in the team. Like, so for product managers, what this means is be really diligent about building your hypotheses and your KPI scenarios that can represent how players will react to these features. For producers, it means doing your scenario planning for project plans based on, once you have stuff out in the wild, how can you quickly react to it? And for engineers and designers, it is about, can I have enough, feature toggles in there? Can I have enough configs that I put in there so that I'm able to quickly react again, right? So not everything is going to go the way you planned. Even if you've tested it a lot and you've got good feedback, putting it out in front of players, millions of people, like that is the real test. This is something that a lot of us hear often, like as we're building any software product, not just games, is in order for us to get this done, we need more resources. Now, I'm a big believer, like this book inspired me a lot. I'd highly encourage y'all to read this if you haven't. It's a book called Jugaad Innovation. It talks about fueling innovation that's fueled by resource constraints. So it's a lot of stories of entrepreneurs in India who have basically built these very cool things because they didn't have access to a lot of resources, but they did, they were able to create magic just with what resources they had on hand. So I'm a firm believer in managing by constraints. I think that is great for challenging teams. And it's basically creating that problem space for teams to basically tackle saying, hey, this is the box you have to operate in, and what can you do within it? One example was that example I gave about the worlds and plants in Plants vs. Zombies 2, like where we came up with this fund of frugal innovation where we said, hey, let's figure out what are the things we can do that's minimal team effort, but maximizing the player experience. And that's what led to those changes that we made in the game. Now, I put this picture in because I'm sure, like, this is I had to dig for this picture, but this is Vilfredo Pareto, an Italian economist who came up with this principle that even in the last 3 days at GDC, like almost every conversation I've had has involved somebody using that 80-20 rule. So like I'm a big fan of this rule. Like it's basically 80% of your results are driven by 20% of what you're putting in. My favorite, of course, is 80% of revenue is coming from 20% of effort. And I'm sure all of you have examples to this. So if all else fails, the Pareto rule always works in game dev. So please use that. So to sum it up, the three lenses are players, people, which is the team, and process. And so always thinking about all of these, like when you're looking to make any decision, to think of it in terms of all of these three aspects, I think helps it to be cohesive. So one example would be like, let's say weekly events that you're putting in the game, right? So from a player perspective, what does it do for players? It's a chance for them to come back regularly in the game. It's a chance for them to get access to exclusive and new rewards. From a team and process perspective, it's basically making sure you have your goals clear, your hypotheses set for these events. Your engineers and designers are having the right tweaks in so that you're able to quickly adapt the event on the fly based on how it's performing out in the wild. Using that for any feature that you're building, I think is a lot of fun. So that's in a nutshell what I had for the talk, and happy to answer any questions, and I can ask you guys questions as well I have if needed. So. All right, so then I will ask a question. Are there any examples that y'all can give of small things having a huge impact in your game? Like you've built a big feature or a big system, but it was really some small element of it that really did well for you? People still waking up. It's 11 o'clock, man. Any other questions? All right. Cool. We'll wrap. Thank you.